Get out of my car. The scream tore through the underground parking garage like a whip crack. Adon Bellow's voice, sharp, venomous, and loud enough to echo off concrete walls, made two security guards turn their heads. I said get out. Are you deaf or just stupid? Sadi remained still in the driver's seat, his hands resting on the steering wheel, his face calm as morning water. He didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He simply waited. Look at this fool, Adon hissed, leaning forward from the backseat, her perfume choking the air between them. I'm talking to you, driver, or do I need to spell it out in your village language? Sadi's jaw tightened just barely, but his voice, when it came, was steady. Madam, the engine is still running. I was waiting for your instruction. Adon's eyes flashed. Instruction? You need instruction to know when to get out. What kind of brain did your mother give you? Silence. Sadi opened the door and stepped out, his movements precise and unhurried. He stood beside the black SUV, hands folded in front of him, his gaze fixed on a point just past Adon's shoulder. Never her eyes, never direct. That was the rule. Welcome to TJ's story, where every tale carries a lesson and every character hides something deeper. Subscribe now because this story, it's about to turn everything upside down. Adon Bellow was a woman who wore her wealth like armor. Gold bracelets stacked up her wrists, designer sunglasses even indoors. Her handbag cost more than Sadi's yearly salary, and she made sure everyone knew it. Lagos knew her name. The Bellow family owned hotels, construction firms, import businesses that stretched from Victoria Island to Lekki and beyond. Adon herself managed nothing. She owned things, including people. Or so she thought. Sadi had been her driver for 11 months. 11 months of silence. 11 months of yes, ma. 11 months of swallowing words that wanted to rise like bile. But Sadi was not a man who broke easily. He was 42 years old, though he looked younger. Lean, clean-shaven, with eyes that carried something most people missed: depth, intelligence, a history no one asked about. He woke at 4:30 a.m. every day, prayed, exercised in the cramped corner of his one-room apartment in Agegunnel, ironed his shirt with precision, polished his shoes until they reflected the ceiling bulb. By 6:00 a.m., he was parked outside Adon's gate in Ikoyi, waiting. Always waiting. Sadi doesn't talk much, Adon's friends would say, laughing over champagne. That's because there's nothing in his head, Adon would reply, waving her hand dismissively. He's like furniture, useful but forgettable. They laughed, always laughed. But Sadi heard everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon, when the humiliation reached a new peak. Adon had a meeting at the Eco Hotel. High profile. Politicians, business moguls, society women in gels tall enough to scrape chandeliers. Sadi parked the car and opened her door as usual. Wait here, she said, not looking at him. And don't embarrass me by wandering around. Yes, ma. An hour later she returned, but not alone. Two women flanked her. Bisola, tall and glamorous, and Tola, shorter but sharper, with eyes like a hawk. Is this him? Bisola asked, tilting her head as if inspecting livestock. Yes, Adon said, smirking. My driver, Sadi. Tola laughed, a high, cruel sound. Adon, you were not lying. He looks like he irons his uniform with prayer. Probably does, Adon said. He's very holy. They climbed into the car, still laughing. Sadi started the engine. Take us to the mall, Adon ordered. And Sadi, try not to hit anything. I know thinking and driving is hard for you. Bisola snorted. Tola covered her mouth, eyes gleaming with amusement. Sadi said nothing. At the mall, they shopped for 2 hours. Sadi carried their bags, 7 of them heavy with shoes, dresses, perfumes. He walked 3 steps behind, invisible. At one point, Bisola stopped in front of a suit store. Adon, look, she said, pointing at a mannequin in a navy blue suit. That would look good on someone with actual class. Adon glanced at Sadi, then back at the suit. Sadi in a suit, please. You can't put a crown on a goat and call it a king. They erupted into laughter. Sadi's fingers tightened around the bag handles, but his face remained smooth, unreadable. The breaking point came 3 days later, in an elevator. Adon had a meeting on the 12th floor of a corporate building in Victoria Island. The elevator was crowded. Businessmen in crisp shirts, women in pencil skirts, the smell of expensive cologne thick in the air. Sadi stood in the corner, as always. Adon was on her phone, loud and careless. "Yes, darling, I'm telling you, my driver is the most clueless man alive. Yesterday I asked him to buy plantain and he came back with bananas. Bananas." Laughter rippled through the elevator. Sadi stared at the floor numbers, 567. "And he's so quiet," Adon continued. "I don't think he's ever had an original thought in his life." A man in a gray suit glanced at Sadi. For a moment, their eyes met. The man's expression shifted, something like pity or maybe discomfort. Sadi looked away first. 8, 9, 10. When the elevator doors opened, Adon stepped out without a word. Sadi followed. But something had changed inside him. Something small, quiet but undeniable. That evening, Adon sat in her living room with Bisola and Tola, sipping wine and scrolling through party venues on her tablet. "My birthday is in 2 weeks," she announced. "I want it to be unforgettable." "You always do it big," Tola said, grinning. "What's the theme this year?" Adon's eyes gleamed. "Elegance, class, exclusivity." She paused, then smiled slowly. "And I'm going to invite Sadi." Bisola nearly choked on her drink. "What?" "You heard me." Adon leaned back, swirling her glass. "I'm going to invite my driver to my birthday party." Tola's mouth fell open. "Why?" "Because," Adon said, her smile widening, "I want to see him squirm. I want everyone to see what happens when someone like him walks into a room full of people like us." Bisola's eyes lit up with wicked delight. "Adon, you're terrible." "I know." Adon raised her glass. "It'll be the joke of the year." They clinked glasses, already imagining the scene. The next morning, Adon called Sadi into her study. He stood near the door, hands folded. "Sadi," she said sweetly, too sweetly, "I'm having my birthday party in 2 weeks. It's going to be at the Grand Pavilion, very exclusive." "Congratulations, Ma." "And," she continued, watching his face carefully, "I'd like you to attend." Silence. Sadi blinked once, twice. "Ma." "You heard me. I'm inviting you, as a guest." For the first time in months, Sadi's expression shifted. Not shock, not fear. Something else. "Thank you, Ma," he said quietly. Adon waited for panic, for stammering, for him to refuse, to make excuses, to reveal his discomfort. But Sadi simply nodded. "I'll be there." Adon's smile faltered, just slightly. "Good," she said, recovering quickly. "Dress appropriately, it's a formal event." "Yes, Ma." He turned and left. Adon sat back in her chair, frowning. Why didn't he refuse? What kind of man accepts humiliation without anger? And why didn't Sadi refuse the invitation? The moment Sadi left Adon's study, Bisola leaned forward from the sofa where she'd been eavesdropping. He said yes. Her voice carried pure disbelief. Adon nodded slowly, still staring at the door, without hesitation. Tola laughed, but it sounded forced. Maybe he doesn't understand what kind of party this is. Wait until he realizes he'll be surrounded by senators, CEOs, oil moguls. He understood, Adon interrupted. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against her wine glass. "That's what bothers me." "Bothers you?" Bisola raised an eyebrow. "Adon, this is what you wanted, comic relief, entertainment." "I know." Adon's smile returned, sharper now. "But I expected him to panic, to make excuses, to show some fear." "He's probably terrified," Tola said, waving her hand dismissively. "He's just too proud to show it. Men like that, they'd rather die than admit they don't belong." Bisola's eyes gleamed with malicious excitement. "Imagine him walking into the Grand Pavilion in whatever cheap suit he manages to scrape together. The look on people's faces." "It'll be perfect," Adon finished, her confidence returning. Absolutely perfect. They raised their glasses again, already composing the story they'd tell at brunch the next day. None of them noticed that Sadi, standing just outside the door to retrieve Adon's car keys from the side table, had heard every word. His hand paused on the keys. Then, slowly, he picked them up and walked away. That night, Sadi's one-room apartment in Agegunnel was silent except for the hum of his small fan and distant street noise filtering through the louvers. He sat on the edge of his narrow bed, still wearing his driver's uniform, white shirt, black trousers, both pressed with military precision despite being years old. The invitation wasn't written. Adon hadn't given him a card, but the words hung in the air like smoke. You're invited. Dress appropriately. It's formal. A trap dressed as hospitality. Sadi stood and moved to the corner of the room where a wooden box sat beneath his only table. He hadn't opened it in 2 years. Dust had settled into its grooves like memory. He knelt, brushed the surface clean, and lifted the lid. Inside, photographs. The first showed a younger Sadi, maybe 30 years old, standing on a runway. Studio lights blazed around him. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like water, his posture commanding, his expression intense. Behind him, a backdrop read, Lagos Fashion Week 2013. The second photo, Sadi shaking hands with a woman in designer glasses, a contract visible on the table between them. The third, Sadi and his mother. She was small, elegant, her head wrap deep indigo. Her smile was warm, but her eyes held something stronger, wisdom. On the back of the photo, her handwriting, "Success is not louder than character. Remember." Sadi's fingers trembled as he set the photos aside. Beneath them, wrapped in old newspaper, was a suit. Not just any suit. A midnight blue, 3-piece suit, Italian wool, hand-stitched with subtle pinstripes that caught light like secrets. The kind of suit that didn't announce itself. It simply was. Sadi lifted it carefully, the fabric still perfect despite the years. He'd worn it once, at the peak of his modeling career, at an award ceremony where his face was on every billboard in Lagos. Before everything collapsed. Before his mother's illness drained his savings. Before the industry moved on without him. Before he became invisible. He held the suit against his chest and closed his eyes. A phone buzzed on the table. Sadi's eyes opened. He set the suit down gently and picked up his old, cracked-screen phone, the one he used before he became Adon's driver, the one that still had contacts from his old life. The message was from Kola, a photographer he'd worked with years ago. "Sadi, is this still your number? I saw someone who looks like you driving in Ikoyi yesterday. Tell me that wasn't you, brother." Sadi stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed slowly, "It was me." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "What happened to you, man? You just vanished." Sadi's thumb hovered over the keyboard. The full story was too heavy for a text message. The medical bills, the debt, the choices made in desperation, the pride swallowed daily. Instead, he wrote, "Life happened, but I'm still here. You were one of the best, Sadi. People still ask about you." Sadi looked at the suit draped across his bed, then at his driver's uniform hanging on the wall. "I have somewhere to be in 2 weeks, he typed. "Somewhere I wasn't supposed to fit." "Where?" "A birthday party, very exclusive." There was a long pause. Then, "So show them who you really are." Sadi set the phone down. He walked to the suit, ran his hand along the lapel, feeling the quality, the memory, the man he used to be still woven into every thread. His reflection stared back from the small mirror on his wall, tired eyes, weathered hands, but something else too. Something that hadn't died. Something that Adon and her friends couldn't see because they'd never bothered to look. Dignity. Sadi picked up the suit and held it against his frame. "This invitation was meant to shame me," he whispered to the empty room. His jaw tightened. "But it will not." The Grand Pavilion on Victoria Island was a monument to excess. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls. Marble floors gleamed under soft golden lighting. Imported flowers, orchids, roses, lilies exploded from vases taller than grown men. The air smelled of expensive perfume, aged wine, and the particular musk of old money meeting new ambition. Adon Bellow's 40th birthday party wasn't just an event. It was a declaration. "Everything needs to be perfect," she told the event planner, a thin woman with a tablet and the exhausted expression of someone who'd heard this phrase 700 times. "I want people to talk about this for months." "Yes, Ma, the ice sculpture is confirmed. The champagne tower is being assembled now. The live band arrives at 7. And the photographer." "3 photographers, Ma, plus a videographer for your entrance." Adon smiled, satisfied. She stood in the center of the empty hall, already imagining it filled with Lagos elite, politicians' wives, business magnates, socialites whose faces graced magazine covers. And somewhere among them, like a stain on silk, would be Sadi. The thought made her smile wider. Bisola and Tola arrived early, dressed in sequined gowns that caught every light. "Adon," Bisola squealed, arms spread for an air kiss. "This is incredible, you've outdone yourself." "Wait until you see the cake," Adon said, leading them toward the dessert table where a 5-tier masterpiece stood, covered in edible gold leaf. Tola whistled low. "How much did this cost?" "If you have to ask, you can't afford it," Adon replied, her favorite line. They laughed, the kind of laughter that echoed in expensive spaces. "So," Bisola said, lowering her voice conspiratorially, "is he coming?" Adon's eyes sparkled. "Who?" "Don't play, the driver, your little experiment." "Oh, Sadi," Adon waved her hand. "Yes, I sent him a reminder yesterday, he confirmed." Tola covered her mouth, already giggling. "What do you think he'll wear?" "Probably something he borrowed from his cousin," Bisola said. "2 sizes too big. Shoes held together with prayer and duct tape." Adon sipped her champagne. "Whatever he wears, it won't matter. The moment he walks through that door, everyone will know exactly what he is." "A joke," Tola finished. "Exactly." They clinked glasses, their laughter swallowed by the vastness of the hall. By 7:30 p.m., the grand pavilion was alive. Over 200 guests filled the space, women in gowns that cost more than cars, men in Italian suits discussing contracts worth millions. A live band played smooth jazz. Waiters glided between clusters of people carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres and champagne flutes. Adon stood near the entrance in a gold gown that hugged every curve, greeting guests with the practiced grace of someone who knew their net worth by handshake. "Senator, so glad you could make it." "Mrs. Adami, you look stunning." "Chief, your wife told me you just closed the Abuja deal. Congratulations." Every few minutes, her eyes would flick toward the door. "Waiting." Bisola appeared at her elbow. "Any sign of him?" "Not yet." "Maybe he chickened out," Tola suggested, joining them with a fresh glass of wine. Adon frowned. "He confirmed this morning." "Well, it's almost 8. If he's coming, he better hurry before." The music dipped slightly. A ripple of attention moved through the crowd like wind across water. Heads turned toward the entrance. Adon's heart jumped. "Is that?" But it was just another guest, a businessman she vaguely recognized. She exhaled, annoyed with herself for the spike of anticipation. "Relax," Bisola said, reading her expression. "He'll show, and when he does, we'll have front-row seats to the greatest comedy of the year." They laughed again, but Adon's eyes never left the door. At exactly 8:15 p.m., in his small room in Agegunnel, Sadi stood before his mirror. The midnight blue suit fit him perfectly, because it had been made for him back when his measurements mattered, back when designers sent him clothes just to be seen on his frame. He'd had it adjusted slightly that afternoon by an old tailor in Balagun Market, a man who'd recognized him immediately. "Sadi, Sadi the model. Ah, my brother, where have you been?" "Around," Sadi had replied quietly. The tailor had worked in reverent silence, his skilled hands remembering the shape of excellence. Now Sadi adjusted his collar. The white shirt beneath the vest was crisp. His shoes, brown leather, polished to a mirror shine, were the same ones he'd worn to fashion shows a decade ago. They'd survived because he'd cared for them. Everything about him was deliberate, precise, intentional. He picked up his phone. One message from Kola. "Whatever happens tonight, walk in like you own the room. Because you do." Sadi slipped the phone into his pocket. He took one last look in the mirror. The man staring back wasn't a driver. He was something Adon Bellow had never seen. He was himself. The Grand Pavilion's entrance doors were 12 feet tall, polished mahogany with brass handles. At 8:47 p.m., they began to open. The music didn't stop, but conversations did, one by one like dominoes falling. A woman near the champagne tower paused mid-sentence. A businessman turned, glass halfway to his lips. Baisola's eyes widened. Tola's mouth fell open. And Adon felt something cold settle in her chest. Because the man walking through the door wasn't the one she'd expected. Will Sadi embarrass himself, or will the party embarrass someone else? Silence hit the Grand Pavilion like a physical force. The live band continued playing, but the notes seemed distant, irrelevant, as if the music itself had lost confidence. Sadi walked through the entrance with the kind of presence that couldn't be taught, only earned through years of owning spaces just like this one. His midnight blue suit caught the chandelier light with every step. The fabric moved with him like water, tailored so perfectly it seemed to breathe. His posture was straight but not stiff, his shoulders relaxed but commanding. His brown leather shoes clicked against the marble floor in a rhythm that made people unconsciously straighten their own spines. But it wasn't the suit. It was him. The quiet dignity he'd carried through months of humiliation had transformed into something undeniable. His face, the same face Adon saw every morning behind the wheel, now seemed carved from different stone. Cheekbones sharp, jawline defined. Eyes that had always looked down now looked forward, steady and clear. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. He simply walked. A woman near the entrance whispered to her husband, "Who is that?" "I don't know," the man replied, unable to look away. "But he looks familiar." Phones emerged from designer clutches like synchronized choreography. Camera apps opened. Fingers hovered over screens. Baisola grabbed Tola's arm so hard her nails left marks. That's not." "It is," Tola breathed, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. Adon stood paralyzed near the champagne tower, her gold gown suddenly feeling too tight, too bright, too desperate. "That's not how he looks." The thought screamed through her mind on repeat. "That's not my driver." But it was. Sadi's eyes swept the room with calm assessment, not searching, not nervous, just aware. When his gaze landed on Adon, he changed direction, moving toward her with unhurried purpose. The crowd parted without realizing it. "Good evening, Ma." His voice was the same, low, measured, respectful, but somehow it sounded different in this context. Stronger, fuller. Adon's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Sadi." The name came out like a question, like she needed confirmation that this man was the same one who'd carried her shopping bags 3 days ago. "Yes, Ma," a slight bow of his head. "Thank you for the invitation. Happy birthday." He extended a small, wrapped box, simple brown paper, tied with twine. Nothing expensive, but the gesture was impeccable. Adon took it automatically, her fingers numb. Around them, whispers multiplied like bacteria. "Wait, that's her driver." "No way, look at him." "He's gorgeous." "That suit is Brioni. I'd recognize that cut anywhere." "Who is he really?" A photographer, one of the 3 Adon had hired, appeared at Sadi's elbow. "Sir, excuse me, can I get a photo?" Sadi turned. And for the first time that evening, he smiled. Not broadly, just a slight curve of his lips that somehow transformed his entire face. "Of course." The flash went off. Then another. Then 5 more. People moved closer, drawn by instinct to whatever was capturing attention. Within 90 seconds, a small crowd had formed around Sadi, not trapping him, but orbiting him, like he'd become the sun and they were planets adjusting their trajectories. "That suit is incredible," a woman in diamonds said. "What's your tailor?" "A small shop in Balagun," Sadi replied smoothly. "A master craftsman, very traditional." "And your name?" asked a man in wire-rimmed glasses. A tech CEO Adon had spent 20 minutes flattering earlier. "Sadi. Just Sadi. Sadi Okonkwo." The tech CEO's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Okonkwo, why does that sound familiar?" "Perhaps we've met before," Sadi said mildly. Adon watched this unfold like a car crash in slow motion. Her party, her guests, her spotlight. All of it bending toward her driver. Bisola appeared at her side, her voice urgent and low. "Adon, how did you not know he looked like this?" "He doesn't," Adon started, then stopped. "He never looked like this, not once, not ever." "Well, he does now," Tola muttered, her expression caught between admiration and confusion. "And everyone's noticed." A senator's wife swept past them toward Sadi, her hand extended. "Young man, you simply must tell me where you got that suit." Adon's fingers tightened around the small, wrapped box Sadi had given her. She hadn't even looked at it, couldn't look at it, could barely breathe. This wasn't how the joke was supposed to work. By 9:15 p.m., Sadi had been introduced to half the room. He accepted champagne from a passing waiter but barely sipped it. He answered questions with polite brevity. He listened more than he spoke, a skill that made people feel heard, important, valued. Women found reasons to touch his arm while laughing. Men clapped his shoulder like they'd known him for years. Someone mentioned fashion. Someone else mentioned modeling. And then, like a stone dropped into still water, recognition rippled outward. "Wait," a woman in red said suddenly, her eyes going wide. "Sadi Okonkwo, Sadi Okonkwo, you walked for Diola Sago in 2013. Heads swiveled. "And for my Atafo," someone else added, memory clicking into place. "You were everywhere that year. Lagos Fashion Week, Arise Fashion Week." "I remember." A younger woman pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. "You did that campaign for Oh My God here." She turned her phone around. On the screen, a billboard advertisement from 2013. Sadi, younger but unmistakable, wearing a black tuxedo against a Lagos skyline. The tagline read, "Elegance redefined." "That's you." The crowd pressed closer, excited now, energized by the revelation. "What happened?" someone asked. "You just disappeared." Sadi's expression remained calm, but something flickered in his eyes, something private, something that had cost him. "Life required different priorities," he said simply. It was the perfect answer, mysterious enough to intrigue, humble enough to respect, final enough to close the topic. A photographer, not one of Adon's hired ones, but a guest with a professional camera, raised his lens. "Can I post this? My followers will lose their minds." Sadi hesitated for only a second, then nodded. The camera clicked. The photographer's fingers moved quickly across his phone screen, uploading, tagging, captioning. Within 3 minutes, the photo was live on Instagram. Within 8 minutes, it had 200 likes. Within 15 minutes, it was being shared across Lagos social media like wildfire. The caption read, "He's back. Sadi Okonkwo spotted at an exclusive VI party. The king returns. Crown Lagos nightlife fashion icon Sadi Okonkwo." Adon watched from across the room, her champagne flat and warm in her hand. Bisola tried to approach her, but Adon waved her away. She couldn't process it, couldn't reconcile the man in the midnight blue suit, commanding attention, receiving admiration, being photographed, with the silent driver who said, "Yes, Ma," and carried her bags. Who is he? The question burned. But deeper, more painful, who did I think he was? Her phone buzzed, a notification, then another, then 7 more in rapid succession. She opened Instagram. Her feed was flooding with photos of Sadi, tagged at her party, at her event. Comments poured in. Wait, this is at Adon Bellow's party. She has Sadi OKONKWO at her birthday. How did she even? I heard he vanished years ago. What a comeback. Whoever got him to come out of hiding is a legend. Adon's hand trembled. They thought she'd planned this, thought she'd orchestrated his presence as some kind of social coup. The irony tasted like ashes. Across the room, Sadi caught her eye. For a moment, their gazes held. He didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply inclined his head, the same respectful gesture he'd given her 1,000 times before. Then he turned back to his conversation, and Adon realized with cold, creeping certainty. The joke hadn't been on him. It had never been on him. The party continued until midnight, but for Adon, it ended the moment Sadi walked through the door. She went through the motions, cutting her 5-tier cake, thanking guests, posing for photos, but her smile felt painted on, artificial, a mask she couldn't remove. Every few minutes, her eyes would find Sadi across the room, still surrounded, still magnetic, still completely, impossibly present in a way that made her chest tight with something she refused to name. At 11:30 p.m., she saw someone new approach him. A woman, late 30s, sleek black dress, hair pulled back in a severe bun. She carried herself with the particular confidence of someone who controlled access, opportunity, and careers. Adon recognized her immediately, Kem Adelek, one of Lagos's top modeling agents, the woman who could resurrect a dead career with a single phone call. No. The word screamed silently in Adon's mind. She moved closer, weaving through clusters of guests, champagne forgotten on a passing tray. She needed to hear this, needed to know. Sadi Okonkwo, Kem was saying, her voice smooth as expensive whiskey. I thought I was seeing a ghost. Kem, Sadi's smile was warmer now, genuine. It's been a long time. 6 years, maybe 7. Kem's eyes appraised him with professional precision. You look exactly the same. Better even, time's been kind. Or I've been lucky. Luck had nothing to do with what you were. Kem paused, her gaze sharp and assessing. What you are, the industry still talks about you, Sadi, the one who walked away. I had my reasons. I'm sure you did. Kem reached into her small clutch and withdrew a business card, black, minimalist, expensive. But reasons change, circumstances evolve, and right now I'm rebuilding my roster with faces that have substance, experience, presence. She held out the card. Sadi didn't take it immediately. Kem, I appreciate the thought, but... Don't answer now, she interrupted gently. Just listen. I have a campaign launching next month, high-end, international. The client specifically wants mature, distinguished faces, not boys, men. And when I saw you tonight, she shook her head, almost laughing. It's like the universe dropped the answer in my lap. What kind of campaign? Luxury watches, print and digital, 3-month contract to start with potential for extension. The shoot's in 2 weeks, just an audition, really. No commitment, just show them what you can do. Sadi stared at the card in her hand. Adon stood 3 meters away, partially hidden behind a decorative column, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it over the music. 2 weeks, audition, contract. The words felt like bullets. I have a job, Sadi said quietly. Kem's eyebrow arched. A job? Yes. Doing what? Silence stretched between them. Then Sadi said, with no shame, no hesitation, I'm a driver. Kem blinked, once, twice. Then she laughed, not mockingly, but with something like wonder. You're serious? Yes. Sadi Okonkwo, who walked for Diola Sago and Maya Tafo, who had contracts with 3 major brands, who was on billboards across this city, drives a car for someone. That's correct. Kem studied him for a long moment. Then she placed the card directly in his hand. Then drive to this address 2 weeks from Saturday, 10 a.m., and bring whatever made you walk the way you walked tonight. Sadi's fingers closed around the card. No promises, he said. I'm not asking for promises, I'm asking for a chance. Kem's smile softened. We all deserve a second act, Sadi, some of us more than others. She touched his shoulder briefly, then disappeared into the crowd. Sadi stood alone, the black business card stark against his brown skin. Adon stepped out from behind the column, her legs moving before her brain caught up. Sadi. He turned, and for a flash, just a flash, she saw something in his eyes that made her feel like the stranger, like she was the one who didn't belong. Yes, Ma. The title felt wrong now, distorted, like calling a lion a house cat. That woman, Adon started, her voice sharper than intended. What did she want? She offered me work. What kind of work? Sadi's gaze was level calm. Modeling work, Ma. Modeling? Adon almost laughed, but the sound died in her throat. You're a driver, Sadi. You work for me. Yes, Ma, I do. So this is just a distraction. You're not seriously considering. I haven't decided, Sadi interrupted gently, but I have 2 weeks to think about it. Adon's hands clenched at her sides. You have responsibilities, a job, you can't just. Ma, his voice was quiet, but it cut through her words like a knife through silk. You invited me here to humiliate me. The statement hung in the air between them, naked and undeniable. Adon's face flushed. I don't know what you. Yes, you do. Sadi's expression didn't change. No anger, no bitterness, just truth. You invited me because you thought I would embarrass myself, that I would prove I didn't belong in your world. That's not. But I've always belonged in rooms like this, Ma. I just forgot for a while. He looked around at the grand pavilion, the chandeliers, the marble, the wealth dripping from every surface. You reminded me. He inclined his head in that same respectful gesture. Thank you for the invitation, and happy birthday. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. Adon stood frozen, her mouth open, her mind screaming protests she couldn't voice. Around her, guests were still laughing, still drinking, still celebrating. But all she could see was Sadi's back, as he disappeared through the mahogany doors. 3 days later, Adon sat in her living room, scrolling through her phone with increasing agitation. Sadi's face was everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, even TikTok. The return of Sadi, OKONKWO. From runway to real life, the model who disappeared. Who is Sadi Okonkwo, and why is everyone obsessed? The fashion blogs had picked up the story, the entertainment sites, even mainstream news outlets were running features. The mystery of the missing model. Her phone rang. Bisola. Have you seen this? Bisola didn't wait for hello. Yes. Adon, people think you hired him, like deliberately brought him out of hiding as some kind of power move. I know. They're calling you a genius, saying you have connections no one knew about. Adon closed her eyes. I know, Bisola. So why do you sound miserable? Because the truth was worse than the lie. Because she'd tried to destroy someone and instead made him a sensation. Because somewhere in her house, Sadi was polishing her car and she couldn't look him in the eye. I have to go, Adon said and hung up. She walked to the window. Outside, in the driveway, she could see Sadi washing the SUV with the same methodical precision he brought to everything. But now she saw it differently. Not servitude. Discipline. Not submission. Dignity. Her phone buzzed again. Another notification. She looked down. A new post had gone viral, a side-by-side photo. Left side, Sadi from a 2013 billboard. Right side, Sadi from her party. The caption, some people age, kings evolve. Welcome back, Sadi Okonkwo, crown. 48,000 likes in 2 hours. Adon's hands trembled. And in the driveway below, Sadi wrung out his cloth, straightened his shoulders, and continued working, unaware that the phone in his pocket held a reminder about an audition that would change everything. Should Sadi leave his job? And how will Adon react when power shifts completely? 2 weeks felt like 2 years. Sadi continued his work with the same quiet precision, arriving at 6:00 a.m., polishing the car, driving Adon to her meetings, waiting in parking lots while she conducted business she considered important. But everything had changed. The silence between them was no longer comfortable. It was weighted, electric, dangerous. Adon no longer insulted him. She barely spoke to him at all. And when she did, her voice carried something it never had before: uncertainty. "Sadi, take me to the salon," she'd say, avoiding his eyes in the rearview mirror. "Yes, Ma." That was all. No jokes, no mockery, no audience to perform for. Bisola and Tola stopped visiting, or maybe Adon stopped inviting them. Either way, the house felt quieter, emptier. On Saturday morning, the morning of the audition, Sadi woke at 4:00 a.m. He prayed longer than usual, exercised, stood before his mirror in the midnight blue suit that had already changed his life once. The address on Kem's business card led to a studio in Lekki, minimalist, professional, flooded with natural light. Inside, 3 people sat behind a long table: Kem, a creative director, and a representative from the watch company. "Sadi Okonkwo," Kem said, standing, "right on time." "Always," Sadi replied. The audition lasted 45 minutes. They asked him to walk, to turn, to stand still while they studied the way light carved shadows across his face. They took test shots, close-ups of his hands, his profile, his eyes. They asked why he'd left. "Family obligations," Sadi said simply. "My mother was ill, I had to make a choice. And now? Now I'm ready to make a different one." The creative director leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "You're older than most of our models." "I am. But that might be exactly what we need. Maturity, gravitas, someone who's lived." He glanced at his colleagues. "Someone who knows what a luxury watch actually means, time earned, not given." Kem smiled. 3 days later, the call came. Sadi was parked outside Adon's office building when his phone rang. "Sadi, it's Kem, they want you. 3-month contract, renewable. Shoot starts next week." He closed his eyes. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. You earned this, just don't disappear again, okay?" "I won't." When Adon emerged from her meeting 20 minutes later, she found Sadi standing beside the car, staring at his phone with an expression she'd never seen before. "Peace." "Sadi." He looked up. "Ma, I need to speak with you." Something in his tone made her stop. "About?" "I'm resigning." The words landed like stones in still water. Adon's carefully composed expression cracked. "What?" "I've been offered a modeling contract. I start next week. I'm giving you proper notice, 2 weeks if you need time to find." "You can't." The words burst out before she could stop them. Sadi's eyebrow raised slightly. "Ma." "You can't just leave. You have responsibilities I depend on." She stopped, hearing how it sounded. Desperate, weak. "You'll find another driver," Sadi said gently. "Someone more suitable." "Suitable?" Adon's voice rose. "What does that mean?" "Someone you can treat the way you treated me." The truth hit like a slap. Adon's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Sadi continued, his voice calm but firm. "You invited me to your party to humiliate me, Ma, to prove I didn't belong. But the only thing you proved was that you never really saw me at all." Adon's hands trembled. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did." Sadi's expression softened, but not with pity. With something worse, forgiveness. "But you taught me something important. You reminded me that my worth isn't determined by what I do for you. It's determined by who I am." He opened the car door for her one last time. "I'll stay the 2 weeks. After that, I wish you well." Adon climbed into the backseat in silence. As Sadi drove, she watched his reflection in the rearview mirror. The same face she'd seen every day for 11 months, but had never truly looked at. Who was he before me? Who will he become after? The questions burned, but she already knew the answers. He was always someone. She just chose not to see it. Sadi's face appeared on a billboard in Victoria Island, larger than life, wearing an elegant silver watch, his expression timeless and commanding. The tagline read, "Time reveals everything." Below it, traffic crawled through Lagos rush hour. In one of those cars sat Adon Bellow, staring up at the billboard through her window. Her new driver, a young man, efficient but forgettable, waited patiently for the light to change. Adon pulled out her phone and scrolled to Instagram. Sadi's account had over 200,000 followers now. His latest post showed him at a fashion event in South Africa, smiling beside designers and models who treated him like royalty. The comments were full of love, admiration, celebration. She'd sent him a message 3 months ago. "I'm sorry." He'd never responded. She didn't blame him. The light turned green. The car moved forward. But Adon kept looking back at the billboard until it disappeared from view. In a small apartment in Ikoyi, modest but tasteful, Sadi sat at his table, reviewing contracts for upcoming projects. His phone buzzed, a message from Kola. "Saw your billboard today, brother. Your mother would be so proud." Sadi smiled, touching the photograph on his desk, his mother in her indigo head wrap, her wisdom still guiding him even now. He typed back, "She taught me that success is not louder than character. I'm finally living that truth." Outside, Lagos hummed with its usual chaos: traffic, noise, ambition, survival. But inside, Sadi felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because of the money, or the fame, or the vindication, but because he'd chosen himself. And that, he realized, was the only invitation that ever truly mattered. A person's job is not their worth. The ones you mock today may be the ones the world bows to tomorrow. Dignity cannot be given or taken, it can only be claimed. And the loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful. Have you ever been judged by where you work instead of who you are? What would you have done if you were Sadi? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Don't forget to subscribe to TJ's Story for more powerful tales that inspire, challenge, and transform. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that could change your perspective. Remember, you are not what people see, you are what you choose to become. Until next time, stay dignified, stay focused, and never let anyone dim your light. Subscribe, like, share, comment.